Thank you. Okay, I think you can, yeah, sounds good. Can you hear me in the way back? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. My business was purchased last year, so I'm actually part of Mosier Consulting in Indianapolis area, and Baltimore. So just that's an update. And I have a different title. How about that? Someone just looked at me and go, what are you talking about? Managing the impactful job benchmark. So if you're here and you want to know about job benchmarks, cool. How many of you have done them before? Okay, excellent. How many of you think they're confusing? Well, just to give you a little idea, I don't think Todd's in here. But Todd one day said to me, all right, before you do another job benchmark, send me what you're going to do, and I'll approve it, and then you do it. Because I was doing it totally wrong half the time. So there's a couple of steps. It's real different than just doing one link, right? I mean, and that maybe makes it a little bit more complicated. I have really, I just love this. This, I think, is one of the most powerful things that TTI has to offer. And the reason for this, I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience. I know you have. I have to be in interviews all the time, right? Interview new candidates and everything. And I'm in this business. I've only been in this IT consulting business for a year. So we're doing some benchmarks, but we're not doing a lot yet. So the recruiter will go, okay, will you interview this guy? Here's his resume. Lies. Like, that is not data. That's creative writing. That is not data. So then lies, and then he goes, okay, well now, tell me what you think. Oh, and now interview him. I'm like, I'm going to interview him about lies, and he's going to lie. And he's not going to really, I'm not saying that these people are bad, but I don't feel like I have any data after an interview. And does anyone feel like that? It's kind of frustrating. And the most important thing I think that we have to remember is we are interviewing from us to them. So what that means is we are biased. And we are biased to us. So you probably have a lot of customers, maybe CEOs. I know we have one right now. The CEO is hiring the salespeople that are just like him. And he's not a salesperson. He's a DC, drive it out utilitarian. And he can't figure out why he's losing his salespeople. Because he's just biased. He's just subconsciously hiring himself. Okay, so that's why the benchmark is so cool. So now I want to walk you through a little bit of the process, but then I want to tell you a couple of stories. I think there's two ways to do it. I think there's a whole bunch of pitfalls. Yeah. So chime in anytime. If you have a question or you want to share a story or anything like that, please chime in. So one of the things, here's a little bit of what I want to talk about. I would like to talk about how can we adapt the job benchmark to the very situation that we have instead of kind of going, we just always use the same one or something like that, all right? So I think that's really important. And I think all the work that we do, no matter what profiles we're using or assessments, I really think it's our moral obligation to be very mindful of this particular customer that we're working with. Instead of going, they're all the same. There's no two that are the same. Right? So I just really think we have a moral responsibility to do that. And then there are some really awesome pitfalls in job benchmarks, and I've pretty much done all of them, so I can actually explain some of those to you. And what's really funny, and I'll talk more about this as we get going, if you want to email me too, I'm happy to share these slides with you if you want them. It's just lou@russellmartin.com, so it's pretty easy. I think what's interesting is you can do the whole process perfectly and then completely ignore the results. I've done that. Like you go, oh, that seems close, because when we're hiring, we're desperate. We're down someone, right, or whatever. We're desperate, and we go, that seems good enough. There's some blue. Let's go. And guess what happens? Hell on earth for the next 6 months until either you fire them or they leave. That's what happens, and it's happened to me a lot. So you can do a really good job and then ignore yourself, which is a really bad thing, right, when you ignore yourself, but I do it. Okay, and then I want to share 2 case studies with you. So basically, the 5 things I'd like to share that I think are really important for benchmarks. How many sciences is the first one. I didn't even know you could do a benchmark with 1 science. Don't do it if you're doing that. So when Candace was talking to me about the slides and stuff, she's like, oh, some people just use DISC. I'm like, what? That's crazy talk. So I think you get it. The more sciences, the better the benchmark, right? The less bias. So that really matters. So I'm sorry that I told you could do 1, but don't. Do at least 3, if not 4, right? Or right, whatever. So, okay, so we'll talk more about that. Then how bias comes into it, which is very insidious. Then I'm going to share a case study right now that we're working with McDonald's on their general manager position for the corporate stores in the U.S. So I want to share what we're doing there. That's kind of big data. And then a littler one, which is we have a coding academy in Indianapolis called 1150 Coding Academy. And it's one of the, how many of you have those in your towns? So there is this bit where you take people that can't do anything else and try to make them into programmers. Not everyone is going to be a good programmer, right? That's a thing. But so they basically take people that really aren't comfortable. I'm going to just say this, pretty nerdy people who didn't go through normal educational channels, right? Because they're brilliant. It's sort of like Sheldon going through, school. So they get those people in theory, and then they go through a weekend where they see if they're going to like IT or not. It's like an experiential weekend. And then they do 9-week program, which is pretty expensive, to be a programmer, and then they get placed as an intern in town somewhere. So it's pretty cool. The interesting thing about that was that the director came to me, and he said he wanted to use DISC to give people feedback on the weekend so that if it came back they were IS aesthetic or whatever, well, I don't think he's doing motivators, right? If he's like an IS or this person, maybe programming's going to make them nuts. Do you know what I mean? So that's what he wanted the benchmark for, to say, hey, before you spend $9,000, here's our due diligence, which I thought was really a pretty cool thing to do. Okay, so that's what I'll talk more about that. And then I also said, I made up this word, collateral awesomeness. The job benchmark can be used for so many other things besides hiring. So many other things. And I want to share that with you as well. Okay, so a little bit on that. So let's get into it. Here's a job benchmark right here. This is actually I believe this was a sales position, sales manager position. And this is what I would say, this is you won't see acumen on this report. If you've used this report, you do not see acumen, right? You can get the data in the full report, but you will not see it on this, what I call this is the coolest part, I love this one, but right, the overview bit. So if you look up here, and just for those of you, this is how I explain it to my customers, and many of you know this already, so bear with me. The order up here on the top, we have job competencies, right? That's not going to go. We have job competencies. Then we have driving forces in this case. Could be motivators, right? That's the middle. And then we have DISC on the bottom. Now, the reason the order of these words is significant. So the order is based on the benchmark. So the benchmark said that 1, customer focus was the highest. 2, do you see what I'm saying? So this isn't going to line up when you look at the reports of what, when you look at all the DISC categories or whatever. It's not going to line up because the benchmark has actually already got what the top ones are we're looking for on all 3 of these categories. So sometimes people get confused about that, like why aren't they all on there? So they're basically making a judgment. We're only going to take the top 7, because by that time you're sort of in the middle. Okay, so this is what I oftentimes tell our customers. The middle, and a lot of times we'll do motivators, sometimes we do driving forces. The middle, if they're off on motivators or driving forces, they're off. Okay, that's a cultural value thing. If any of those look yellow, like see I have a red and a yellow, I don't think this is the right candidate. Just on that. Now, no one else wants you to, that's how I feel about it, because those are so important, right? That's your cultural values.
I completely agree, and I
Okay. I don't know, mine come out. You can probably adapt. You probably can change it. I just don't know it. Yeah. Ours just come out like this, so I don't know. Yeah. So I think that's a really big deal, and I am gonna tell you how you build these. So bear with me on that, and then a little bit on how to finish it up. So we look at competencies. Competencies here are on the top. Competencies, by definition, can be grown. And what that means is if I don't have good people skills, I can practice people skills. I can go get a coach on people skills. I can grow my people skills. They are not set in concrete. So when we're looking at the competencies, if we have a yellow or red or whatever, right? If we have something kind of questionable, which we do in this one, it's really interesting. They're really good on all the top 3 of the competencies, but teamwork is yellow. And depending on the job, if it's an independent salesperson, maybe I don't care. I don't know. You know what I mean? So that's a pause. You kind of go, what does that mean? But I think what's really interesting about this is, in my current job, I don't have time to grow people. So usually when I'm hiring, yes, I know we could give them training on these competencies, and if you're hiring entry-level new people, you could actually build succession plans career plans and career consulting kind of stuff, because you already know what you need to work on when they get in there, right? Onboarding. So that's fine, but you may also be, if you're in a small company, you're just super busy. I don't have time to do this. I can't wait. I can't wait for them to get these competencies up. Does that make sense to everybody? So those are very malleable in a sense, right? You can change those, you can grow those, you can work on those. And we talked about primary driving forces, our motivators. Those, I think, are critical. And then the bottom is DISC. So DISC, as you all know, can change over time with life events, but you're not going to change it every day. So I really think stability-wise, you're looking at motivators, DISC, competencies in terms of that. So I try to explain that to the customers when they're trying to hire. Yeah, thank you.
Do you put a particular weight on those?
Okay, yeah, the question was, are we weighting those 3? I really don't. Well, I should say yes. My bias is the motivators have to be on. That would be my bias. The other ones, it depends on whether you have the capacity to onboard the stuff they don't have in the competencies. So I guess my real bias is yes, motivators, DISC, competencies. I guess. Thinking through. Is that true with you as well? Yeah. Okay, driving forces, as I said, the culture must match. Behaviors, remember, we can adapt that. That's kind of our secret outdoor. But realize when people adapt, and you know this from the DISC profiles, that's why our DISC profiles are so cool, because we have adapt. And we don't just have natural or smushed together like other vendors do, right? Whatever that is. So that's really cool. But adapt. When you adapt, Dr. Izzy Justice would say, you're stressing yourself out, and you're not working effectively. So even though you see, oh yeah, well they're adapting, that could be a problem depending on the job. So you have to watch for that as well. And then acumen, to me, is the bonus round. You know, that's just like another place that you can go to the report and just see the detail. When you're working in here on this gap report, when you get this cool dashboard thing at the end, you have a tendency to just flip down and see that. Does anyone else do that besides me? You just flip down and do that, right? And then instead, though, I really think like for this yellow, or for the yellow and instinctive, I would want to go into the bullet points in the profile part, all the pages, and see which ones got dinged. You know, and do I care for this job? You know, so you want to go the places at least where you see yellow and red, if you're still on, if you're still going with this candidate, you want to go back to the report for sure and read through the details of where did this come from? Okay, where's the granularity of that? So one of the things you have to be able to do a good benchmark is to have key accountabilities. I think key accountabilities is one of the coolest concepts I've ever heard. Like I already told you, I hate resumes. I just hate resumes. So for years, we've been trying to work even in the business on what are the 3 to 5 key accountabilities that this job, which happens to have a person in it, you see how we say that? We don't talk about the person, we talk about this job has to do every single day to make this business successful, which is way easier and much more stable than competency lists. So if you have those big, long, resumes with I do this, or whatever, or even job descriptions and things like that, they go out of date so fast because a lot of it's functional and the business is changing and the names of things are changing all the time. Key accountabilities just stay right there with the job. And there is a process that TTI has for creating key accountabilities. I'm going to share a little bit of that with you in a minute. If you want to have 6, probably you can. If you want to have 1, I don't think that's a good idea. Okay? So you kind of use this with a grain of salt. This is a form that Brittany helped made for us a couple years ago. So if anybody is willing to, if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share it with you. Just as kind of the end goal of the list. Okay? So these are 3 people in totally different jobs, even though they have almost the same shirt on. They're different. They're different people, and their key accountabilities, because they are in 3 different jobs, are going to be different. Okay? They're going to be different. Any questions on that? That's sort of basic, I think. Yes. Yep. Oh, this one is the sheet is? Yep, okay. Let me walk you through how McDonald's works. So I think there's 2 ways to do a benchmark. One is that you actually have top performers that you can, here's my technical term, profile and smush into a job benchmark. Okay? So I can take 5 job reports or whatever, right? And this is where bias is, do I just like them? Or are they really the top performers? So if I use the wrong ones to smush, I have a bad job benchmark, I have a bad hire. Right? Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Okay. So you smush. So you can actually do job reports, and then they can be combined into a job benchmark. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Right. So you'll see where we built this in. So that's an excellent point. If I go smush, a new term has been born, smush. We could say combine. I guess it sounds more grown up. Anyway, be careful though, because we are biased by the people we think are the best. That's just what I'm saying, right? If you're a leader or you're working with a leader, they say, oh, they're the best ones. Probably they're not. They're probably the ones that are most like them. Okay, so you have to be careful. Now, McDonald's has data like you wouldn't believe. So McDonald's has a position called general manager, which runs the restaurant, okay, key position clearly, and a career position. So they would be in the, kind of in a career path there. They either promote them from within or sometimes from outside or whatever. They could come in from any direction. So what was really cool about McDonald's is they can tell me exactly with data what are the top performing restaurants and the general manager that's there. Okay, so that's how we smushed this one. It was because we had really good data. Now there was one, it was really funny. So we actually used the 3 top performers of McDonald's corporate, not the franchises, this is the corporate stores. Okay, they have both. So we built that. Or we're in the process of building that right now. It's hard to catch people at McDonald's. They're very busy, so we haven't got all 3 of the reports yet. But the guy goes, the director said, there's another one who has number 4, fabulous results. And I go into that restaurant, and she's doing everything wrong. And I cannot figure out why that restaurant is successful because she is not following any of the instructions or the processes or anything, but she's still on the top of this list. And I go, well, what do you want to do with that? And he goes, I don't know, what should we do? I said, I don't think we should put it in the benchmark. I think we should test against that one, like you were saying, use that one for a test. And then I want to test it against someone lower in the organization. Like I like to test them against totally different jobs. Totally different jobs. Versus you're bad at that. That's like I didn't want to test them against low performers at McDonald's. That didn't seem quite right.
Did you clarify with these 5 people that they do the job report or their profile?
The smushing, they do the job report. They do the 130, whatever it is. Yeah, they do the job report, and then you smush. Yeah.
And Lou, you have another question.
Okay.
With the gap report, if you're weighing the sciences, doesn't it make sense to arrange it in the order on the page? If you're weighing the sciences, doesn't it make sense to arrange it in order on the page?
I don't know that the person that you are talking to probably doesn't care. Right? You care because we're all purists and we know what the order is and all that kind of stuff. But from a customer's perspective, and if you want to do that, I just don't know how to do that. So if you want to do it, I'm sure someone in this room knows how to do it. So I haven't had any pushback with that. I really like to talk about competencies first anyway, just because they are so malleable, right? I want them to know that. I want them to know that these can be grown, and do you have time? Okay. Okay. So here's what we did. We did the 5 talent reports. We also are going to now test on high performers. And here was another interesting thing. I don't know who it was. I don't have the data on this, and I don't want it. But somebody went to McDonald's and sold them hiring benchmarks, not this process, not TTI, and offended a whole bunch of employees. Like they thought their jobs were at risk. The actual presentation and change management of it went horribly wrong. And so we cannot say hiring. So we are talking about this as a career plan, like we're looking for the next general manager. So we're totally talking about this in the career domain. So just heads up when you're talking to another, has anyone else had that where somebody was in before and they had some crazy thing that made everyone mad and thought they were, sneaking behind their back or whatever? So yeah, so just kind of be aware of that. That was kind of new for me. Okay. So what's going to happen now then is after we do this, we're going to test it on a region and then we're going to roll it out. My challenge at this point from a sales perspective is helping them have enough time to just take the moment to do the talent report basically. But that's going to be, and it'll be really cool to track that data and see how it goes over time. That goes in, yeah. So the job report, you're right. It should be by the time, right, exactly, yeah. I was talking about the other piece too, each one individually, yeah. Okay, any questions on this one? Yeah, thank you.
Wasn't there a process that Adam Wong brought out last year about quick benchmark?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk through that one next, which is the one we did for the Coding Academy. Okay. Yeah, the question was, thank you for reminding me to do that. What's the other option? And Adam, remember last year there was the quick benchmark thing, which is basically streamlined facilitation, right? Just kind of getting your act together, streamlined facilitation. So I will share. So the next one, the 1151, is that. Okay, so remember this is the Coding Academy. And what we did here was I invited 15 of the CIOs in Indianapolis, the top CIOs, to help build a job benchmark so that, and also that they would then have access to it. And they could buy them, of course, but you know what I mean? So that they had that for hiring. So what our audience is, the role, the job, let's say the job. The job was, although this is kind of weird when you think about job, the job was what is the best model for an entry-level programmer? Okay, so would you make a good entry-level programmer? So we're basically making a benchmark of an entry-level programmer. It would be very hard to find consistently the best entry-level programmers. By definition, entry is I don't know what I'm doing. So that wasn't a good benchmark. That wasn't a good smush up opportunity, right? So instead, we did the kind of, we would have a hybrid. This was probably a little longer than Adam's process, but it's the same kind of idea. We took the CIOs, we did this, it was probably about 4 hours. Took the CIOs and you go through the key accountability thing, right? So you go through, we brainstormed with Post-its, what are the capacities? You don't even say competencies, you just say, what are the attributes you'd want this job to have? And then they group them, just your basic facilitation. And eventually, in going through this process, which is all documented on the TIOBAA website, that's all out there. Once you go through this sort of facilitation process, you prioritize, remember the importance of it too, so they're prioritized by importance. Then you can write key accountabilities. Probably that was the hardest thing for the CIOs to write key accountabilities. Because it had been more than 2 hours, they were over it at this point, right? Their longest meeting ever in their entire life. But we had food, so it was all good. So now we have 3, I think we actually have 4 key accountabilities for this. Okay, and then we test it. We had award-winning programmers in Indianapolis. There's awards they give every year from TechPoint, and we tested it against them. That should be different, right? Because they're the experts. They're not entry-level programmers. So they should be off a little bit. And then we actually tested it against some admins that weren't technical at all, right? So we tried to have some due diligence around that. What was really interesting was, I think this ended up being really interesting. The top performers, the award winners, they had all the same thing missing against the benchmark. All of them. These are highly successful technical people, IT people. And it's up here. It was the people skills. So the CIOs want an entry-level programmer to have people skills. That's kind of rare in entry-level programmers. They don't go to school for that. And it's really interesting. I'm in an IT company now. It's really interesting. This world is changing. So technical people now, you know how everything closes, Walmart's closing, Sam stores, everything's different all the time. Well, now programming, which was that job that you could always get a job, right? And it was secret and they could behave badly and everyone left them alone because we didn't know what they were doing. That's over. I don't know how many of you know about agile programming and some of those kind of processes. It's all collaborative. And if you can't be collaborative now, you can't be a programmer. So the people skills, the CIOs knew that. That's our future. I thought that was so interesting. But the top performers were still lacking people skills, right? Lacking people skills. And I think that's mostly competency, right? That can be grown. Okay. Any questions on this? So just to summarize the 2 different ways, the shmush, because I had good data, and I had great data, right? And great insights from McDonald's. And then I don't have any real stand-up people I can smush here, so I gotta go with experts in the field. Now, one time I did a benchmark a long time ago for the Indy 500 for a management position, and it didn't go well because I don't think the people that were in the room knew the job well enough. That is a huge risk. They thought they did, but there's a lot of bosses, including me, that don't really know what their people do on a day-to-day basis, right? I don't really know what they do, but I hope they do it, right? So be very careful about that. Now, because these were all CIOs and they were all similar, I think we were okay in that situation. But the one we did at the 500, they really were too diverse, and it was a really weird benchmark. We had to do it again. Yeah, it just wasn't right.